Very much. Thanks for the intro. By the way, before we jump in, we have a nice small group here so we can be conversational. I would like to understand, what do you guys really want to get out of today? Like, what are your expectations? What's going to make this most valuable? If you walked away and said, I learned this, or I understood this, or I made this contact, what's going to be useful for you? Anyone?
You know, for me, the biggest...
Just identify yourself just for the tape.
Yeah. And you know, the biggest challenge that we run into on digital transformation is, you know, displacing the existing print-first approach to our communications. So,
I was going to say, can we grab a microphone just because I know there's recordings and remote people and so on. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. One of the big challenges that we run into is in digital transformation, how do you effectively replace or displace the prior generation of thinking, which, you know, in our case was print catalog, print first, telephones, and how do you sort of transition into, hey, you know, this is the digital first and web.
Yeah. So it's interesting, you can have the infrastructure, you can have the technology, but then if the culture is behind, right, and you have old school thinking around old school marketing, it's going to be difficult to leverage that. Great, excellent. So how do you kind of overcome that, both from a legacy system perspective, but also the culture perspective? Who else? What else do you guys want to understand? Anyone? Anyone? I see you making eye contact. This gentleman over here. If you don't want me to call on you, just look down. I'm busy. Oh, I got to look at my schedule. Oh, what session am I going to do? Oh, okay.
Thank you. I'm sure this is going to be an open conversations with all of us.
So your
my name is
and...
Praveen
Yeah.
Ingle. I represent L&T Technology Services. Basically, it's an engineering services firm based out of India, but again, we also have footprints here in the US. I mean, I think if I see most of us, I think we are one of those luckiest generation, if I may call, because we have been seeing the analog devices. Now we have been seeing that because of the technology or the innovation, we are transforming these towards the digital, in the sense whatever manually we were able to do in the past, we are now able to convert and make it effortless kind of an activity. The most important thing is, like, we are making every system, every solution smart, right? This is definitely going to help increase your productivity in one or the other way. Be it is like on a personal note or even on a kind of a official note, a professional note, it is helping all of us to kind of like help reduce the time, increase the productivity. Probably that is the old school thinking that we come from, and then ensuring that we take the next generation in terms of a digital transformation.
So it's not just about reducing the time on task, it's really rethinking that whole process to make everything smarter and to digitize and maybe remove those tasks. It's not a matter of less time, it's like get rid of them. Right? Because it's that complete re-engineering. Someone was saying to me that re-engineering is going to make a comeback, right? Business process re-engineering. And we have to look at that when we're doing any of these types of initiatives. Excellent. Who else? What else is important to folks? What else do you want to walk away with?
Hey, I'm Christan from 17 Ways. I'm just really excited to...
17 Ways, not 16 ways, not 18 ways, 17 ways.
Yep.
Okay, very specific.
17 Ways to Change the World is our motto. But I'm really excited to meet all of you because I feel like being in digital transformation and innovation is a bit of a lonely... I'm always ahead of everybody else. People always look at me like, what the hell are you talking about, Christan? And like... So I really would love to hear more about how all of you are pushing the envelope in your company. You know, I did it at HP for a long time, and now I'm in a smaller space, and I don't have my crew around me, right? So I'm really excited to meet everybody.
So you're talking about really the socialization and the envisioning and getting people on that same page. Is it more a matter of at the executive level, at the peer level, at the frontline worker level? Where is it? Or is it all up and down the food chain?
You know, it's always the guys that are actually adopting things that are the biggest holdup, right? I mean, we all know that, right? They're the ones that are sort of digging their heels in and saying, no way, no how. And I do a lot in human-centered design, and I've actually brought that into innovation and thinking about, and I don't know if you guys have seen out of Berkeley now, they're doing the It's like the human-centered AI lab.
Yes.
And it just is really interesting to think about how to bring that human-centered design perspective into all of this. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Into the automation, because AI is a tool to help humans,
Right.
right? We're not replacing humans, we're augmenting them. Anything else? Any other thoughts about what you want to walk away with or what's important to you today? This gentleman over on the left here. Sorry, I can't read the name tags, even if I...
Eric Garrison at SawStop. Basically, we're a table saw company, but technology, we're a manufacturer. Looking at like just use cases, like what are the top 10 takeaways of what we can see are actually going on in this world of digital transformation? What's an actionable takeaway that I can actually bring back?
For your manufacturing world, you're building stuff, right? You're making stuff. And you need to say, well, how do we really apply these technologies, and how do we
100%.
apply it day to day on the factory floor or with the customer experience? So
Yeah.
you're really looking for those practical, what can I do today, while also building that vision for the future.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, great. Any other thoughts before
We
we
had a
before I jump in?
gentleman over here.
Yes, yes, please. And then I'll jump into my opening remarks, and then we'll jump into the presentation.
Hi, I'm Pat Scanlon. I work with the Matters Group. We're digital transformation consultants. So we actually go into corporate and in nonprofit institutions. And like this lady was talking about
Make sure you
here,
exchange business cards.
there we go, we will. Like this lady was talking about here, what we say is that aircraft carriers do turn, they just turn slowly. But fortunately, it's by a small part at the back of the boat. But just as you said, the guy at the top can be turning the wheel, but it's the people in between that if that does want to happen, it won't happen. Right. And so what I wanted to get out of today is obviously some pain points. So thank you very much right off the bat. Right? But also try to look at how some of the more traditional change management methods might work or are working in digital transformation, because a lot of them will work, but not in and of themselves, because they were like we were talking about their old school thinking, but taking the best out of them. So trying to figure out how that works best.
Yeah, and just from my perspective, I think the criticality of that human-centered design is really the issue here, right? What is different for the day-to-day person who's interacting with this stuff? How is their world going to be different, right? What are you going to impact? Are you going to make it easier for them to do their jobs, or is it going to be one other thing they have to do? And maybe at first it will be one other thing they have to do. Maybe you are creating more work initially, but we have to have that vision of where it's going to be, even if it entails more work today. Great, thank you for that context. It's very helpful to at least understand this. As Sarah mentioned, I wrote a book called The AI-Powered Enterprise. I have one copy with me today, and I'll have to figure out how to give that away. But maybe toward the end of the day, if you guys hang in there, I'll find some way to randomly give it to someone. But and also, I'm open to sending a copy out to folks. So if you want to give me contact information, but it won an award, and Tom Davenport, who's a big muckety-muck in the space, said kind things about it, as have others. So that's that. So here's what I want to think about today in terms of, digital transformations or data transformations, right? Many times we can build these great transformations and embed all this new technology and have a great vision and do the process and, have successful AI pilots and POCs. And then what happens? You deploy, and what happens? They're not the same in deployment. Why? They say that data scientists spend more time being data janitors, right, than data scientists. And you're cleaning up. And when you do a pilot or a POC or a sandbox or whatever, you have that time and energy to put into cleansing the data and architecting the data and making sure it's complete. Then you get to production, and guess what? You don't have that. So many of these initiatives are held up by the underlying data architecture. And I'm also going to include content and knowledge. I wrote an article recently about the missing ingredient of digital transformations. It's knowledge. People don't think about the fact that you have to transform your knowledge and your content. And I'm going to show you an example of that a little bit later. And the thing about innovation requires adaptability. It requires agility. It requires some kind of infrastructure that can change. And we can innovate all we want, but we have to be able to keep up with it, with our architecture, with our infrastructure, with our data. And the point here is that if you have all these legacy systems and you have a lot of technical debt that you've never paid off, it's going to impede your ability to innovate. And I have a book recommendation at the end of this that talks a little bit about that and talks about how we innovate and then we ignore maintenance, right? We ignore a lot of the blocking and tackling that's going to make these things successful and sustainable in the long run. So we have to have that digital foundation of ontologies and architecture and taxonomies and knowledge graphs and all of these things that will help us articulate and understand our data and our content, because that's what we build upon, right? We don't build and then suddenly say, okay, where's the data, right? Or let's fix the data now after the fact. Let's offshore it. And the last is, you have to balance speed and innovation with technical debt. And these are all related, right? The technical debt, many times people go, oh, let's get it out there. Let's stand it up. Let's do an MVP. And then what happens? Oh, we didn't document, right? Oh, we didn't have governance in place. Oh, we don't have anybody who's going to own this. Oh, we don't have long-term funding for sustainability. So we have to think about that, and we have to say, look, are we incurring more technical debt by having these systems deployed too quickly in order to innovate, right? So we have to think about the clock speed of that. Now, this is what I used this in a webinar. It actually came from a guy named Juan Cicada from a company called Data.World. And, this is what you're dealing with. And when you talk about getting on the ground and dealing with data and dealing with architecture, right? This is a huge problem because this stuff has grown up over time. There's tables and attributes and no documentation, and the quality of the data is unknown. So the first thing people have to do is they have to start documenting this. They have to start inventorying it, building data catalogs, just so that you have a sense of what you have, who owns it, what the quality is, what the provenance is, how are you going to manage it and govern it moving forward. That's kind of foundational, right? So looking at data catalogs to begin this process as your foundation and cleaning that up and understanding those sources and uses of data and content and knowledge is really critical here. So again, this is a very important piece because it's so complex, and then you start looking at the transformation across these applications and across these different initiatives and processes, right? And we have to start thinking about how we, reconcile the definition of the customer, for example. Everybody wants 360-degree view of customer. Well, that customer is everywhere and all over the place. And if we want to do personalization and contextualization, we have to have the understanding of a content, of an object model describing the customer, right? What are the attributes of the customer? And you have fast-moving attributes and slow-moving attributes. You have this stuff like, who are they? What do they work for? What industry are they in? What equipment do they own? And then there's real-time digital body language, which impacts the customer data model. What have they clicked through? What have they responded to? Are they converting? Those two things come from lots of different data sources. It's distributed and fragmented across your systems. So first-party data is an important concept, right? Because third-party data is going away. Cookies are going away. It's going to be much more difficult. First-party data is your data about your customers that you can harvest from all these touch points. And sometimes people call it a knowledge graph or an identity graph, a customer graph. So all those things need to be considered. And then here's what's really interesting, right? What is the answer to application proliferation? Another application, right? If we could just have one place where everybody goes to get all this stuff. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way, right? We need to make sure that we can keep things in place, but have a semantic layer, have a knowledge graph layer, a data graph layer that helps us access stuff that's in place. It's kind of the Rosetta Stone for all those systems and processes. So, again, then the user has the same problem, right? I mean, one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to remove friction from this process. And I know, by the way, Sarah mentioned we would be, quote, behind schedule on this, so she said not to worry about it. So I'm not going to worry about it if you guys don't worry about it, okay? Anyway, so, but I'll get to our first speaker very soon. But, the user, one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to give people access to the different systems and processes. When we do a digital transformation, we're trying to eliminate this fragmentation. We're trying to create integration at the glass. There's a project, actually, an article of mine was featured in Harvard Business Review in the a special topic issue on how AI is impacting the workplace. I have copies of that too, if anybody wants one. But the point here is it was for applied materials. They had 14 different sources that their field service reps had to go to. This type of a scenario. And by integrating that using an ontology and using a knowledge graph, they were able to have one place to go, and they reduced the time that field service people were spending looking for information by 50%, saved them $50 million per year, that one project. So the payback in these things is enormous, but that's the problem we have to solve. That's one of the things that we're trying to do when we're trying to do these different things. And again, you have lots of sources, you have different ways of retrieving things, you have different devices, but really you want to think about knowledge graphs. How many people here are investigating knowledge graphs? Anyone? Okay, something you should think about, something you should look into. Now there's, it's ontologies power knowledge graphs. Ontology is the enterprise architecture. It's all the taxonomies and metadata and those. People think of it as master data, but it's more than master data. But you have to think about building these organizing principles across the organization that are consistent. That's the language, the lingua franca, the standard terminology for these different systems, and then you map them together. I have a whole day workshop on knowledge graphs. But here's what happens, right? Most organizations today, when they start creating content and knowledge to service their customers and their employees, they end up with all these silos, right? All these silos. And then every silo, every part of the organization has their own process, has their own architecture, has their own workflow. That's exactly what we had been talking about at Dell, right? And so this happens at enterprise scale. It's a mess, and it's very difficult. When organizations compete on knowledge, right? That's all you really are doing. You're taking in information, you're putting out information, even with physical products. I always like to say that my magical device here is sand, metal, and oil, all very cleverly arranged. Right? It's knowledge, right? So that's what we do. Information, money is knowledge, right? We're not walking around with gold Krugerrands, and silver. But then you add on to this cognitive assistant stuff, and this is what it's going to start looking like. You start getting these situations where you have all of that, and now they're adding on cognitive assistant content management. Well, guess what? That's not the way it should be. This is going to be a huge fragmentation mess. If bots or virtual assistants are in your future, you have to solve this problem. And this is the way to solve this problem. This is a large organization that is doing this well. I can't say the name, but it's a large technology firm. They're serving 4 million knowledge transactions per day. And they do it across everything, from field service to distribution partners, channel partners, to the marketing organization, marketing communications, support organization, self-service, and their bots. Everything is going through this because it's a standard set of processes and terminology and taxonomies. Question or comment, or just itchy head? No, okay. Sold to the man in the back. Be careful at an auction, right? Anyway, and then the whole idea is you have to be able to enable this internally and externally. You cannot have acts of heroics upstream and have people not be able to find things and expect a seamless customer experience. So we have to do this across our organization. We need that standard terminology. We need that standard taxonomy and control vocabularies and data standards that cover both structured and unstructured content and data. And that is how, and then when we start to onboard different systems, we need to start having that as a gating factor to say what architecture you're going to be using. I just want to end my opening remarks with this, right? This is a great book. It's The Innovation Delusion. Now, again, they're talking about the fact that a lot of times we overlook the blocking and tackling in order to create the next new shiny bit, right? In order to find something new and exciting, data architecture, governance, data quality, that's too boring. That's not innovation. Well, guess what? It is. It's part of innovation. It has to be part of innovation because you're not going to sustain your innovation unless you do the blocking and tackling. You have to do the blocking and tackling. So that's not the sexy work. That's the tough stuff, but that's what people have. Anyway, I'm going to end, and it can't happen if you're not maintaining stuff, right? So I'm going to end with that. You can certainly reach out to me and talk. Any comments or questions based on that? Because I want to get to our first speaker. Stunned into silence. Yes. Did you have a comment? No? Anyone? Bueller? Does this resonate? Does this make sense? Yes.
So I totally agree with all the data. The thing that I'm challenged with is
Is that a microphone?
I'm challenged with presenting it, so the visualization of that data and actually presenting it in a form that people can consume. Like, there's the classic Challenger
Right.
story, right, about how they presented the data. Why didn't they do something about it? And I
Right.
feel like I hit that all the time. I
Right.
mean, how
So-
do you help these guys, or how do you help create those visualizations that leads to good decisions?
In terms of being able to help people understand the nature of the problem or where it needs to go, or what? Which part of it?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you're presenting data to them so
Right.
that they can make better decisions, so
Right.
they can do a better job.
Right.
And so, to me, the visualization,
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Edward Tufte, but
Yes, Tufty, yes.
yeah, sorry, I said
That's
it
okay,
wrong,
yeah. Tough,
But like to me, that's where the innovation
Yeah.
lies with the
Yeah.
data, is really presenting it in a way
Yeah.
that people can make good decisions.
Absolutely. Does anybody have comments on that? Things that have worked well for you in terms of data present? I always say, what are you missing? What's the piece of information that you need, or that if you didn't have, you could make a better decision? Go ahead.
One of the easiest ones that I've used in the past that works well are mind maps.
Yeah.
Mind maps work really well for not only for showing the flow, but also most of them will allow you to export them to a standard outline for the more linear among your audience, right? So mind maps work really well for that.